doesn't matter how you feel on the inside. If you are on the outside validated and told that you are such and such, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that, you're acceptable, you're enough externally, whether we truly believe that and we are able to integrate that doesn't really matter to the world, right? And when we reject ourselves, primarily we're out of alignment with our higher self. And the act in and of itself doesn't seem like it merits forgiveness. Like, I've rejected myself. It's something that we're just so used to, thinking that when deep down it's something out of integrity with me, but, the culture or society or whoever demands that of us, that it's just not a big deal. I've done that to myself, and it's not a big deal. What a thing, eh? And honestly, can you blame us? Like, our whole lives, everything around us, everyone around us, parents, maybe except for a couple of people that we've encountered in our lives, really just tell us that what's good for them, society, them, that person, whoever, what makes them happy, what is of service to them is of utmost importance. It's priority. It's more important than what is serving to us, than what is honoring to us, right? So even though it's like completely out of alignment with you and what you would like and what would be good for your greatest good or most nourishing for your soul, it's more important what they want. So, for example, like I was saying, we do this to our kids. A lot of times parents have their desires for their children, and rather than, listening to our kids and really being in tune with them and what their desire is for their soul. Sometimes, of course, children need guidance, but ultimately, you can't like always be imposing your desires onto your children, because that's when you build resentment for your kids. Think that you never let me do what I want. I'm talking about like children that are mature enough to really express what their true desires are, not a little kid that's 3 years old and needs our guidance and our protection, but children who, like you have these parents that because they dreamt that they wanted to play basketball or they wanted to be gymnasts or they whatever, they push and push and push their children to do this, and it's not in integrity with their kid, and their kid hates it and they regret it or they resent them and they're just miserable, right? And we do that with our spouses. We do that all the time where, there's no compromise in relationships. Sometimes we don't compromise in relationships. It's my way or the highway. What I want is important and what you want is not, even though I know that it's out of integrity with you, and that it probably is pretty destructive to your inner world, but I don't care because what I want is more important. That's it. We do it to our friends. We do it all the time. Like, and it's, and it sucks. We shouldn't be, but the reality is if you can't go deep and find that place where you've compromised your own integrity, because ultimately everything's a choice, right? Not in like a so-called moral way, but more so in a way where your soul and spirit are not being honored. Like the times you didn't say no when you wanted to, because you just didn't feel like it, or you just felt like, I don't want to do this, but you were afraid because you feared that you wouldn't be counted. Your no wouldn't matter. Who cares about my no? Or like when you believe that your no would mean that you would upset someone that you love, right? And they could stop loving you, or they could abandon you, or they could reject you. So you went along with it. Or the times that you did something, went somewhere, agreed to something that you knew didn't sit right with you, but you did it anyway because you felt bad about it, not doing it. And then even afterwards, you beat yourself up for doing it because you knew that you shouldn't have done it in the first place. Or you, in relationship things, you see red flags, certain behaviors that should definitely pop out at you that are indicative of someone that may not be to your highest good, or there with that goal, that intention. and you ignore the red flags because you fear being alone or you fear being abandoned, and you compromise yourself for what? Because in the end, a lot of times we do that and we still regret it. We still feel bad. We still beat ourselves up about it, right? Especially when we're out of alignment. And it's crazy, or even, let's say this, even the times that you've said to yourself, oh my God, I'm so dumb. Oh my God, I'm ugly. Oh my God, I'm fat. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not gonna be able to do it. I can't make it. I'm stupid. And you believed it. Like legit believed it, even though you would never say those types of things to someone you love, your children, your partner. Maybe some of us may have said it to our partners before, but like, you would never say that stuff to someone, but you do to yourself, right? And I mean, so basically this is just kind of like where I'm trying to get at with this particular video. It's that if you can't recognize the times that you've trespassed against yourself and you can't forgive them, how would you truly be able to recognize that in another person to the degree that you could truly forgive them, right? Another book that I'm kind of reading, because like I was telling you guys, I kind of always reading like a bunch of books at the same time, which is, I don't know how, we'll figure that out. I don't know how productive that is, but I feel like when it's time for me to read something, I read it. I think I might get a Kindle actually, but that's just, I digress. But a book that I'm actually reading is called, it was a gift from a really wonderful friend of mine, called A Course in Miracles. And it just, I was kind of flipping through, just looking for reference and stuff like that, just to kind of, and I found a quote that said, "It is impossible to forgive another, for it is only your sins you see in them. That is why forgiveness of another is an illusion." Because for me, when I interpret this, really ultimately, it stems to, you see someone, you think they've trespassed against you, and really ultimately it's just that so-called sin that you see you see that sin in yourself. And so really, in order to really truly forgive someone else, you have to forgive yourself. For me, a big thing for me, and a big chunk of time, okay, so an example for me was the breaking up with the father of my children, right? And I found that I had a lot of resistance to forgiving him because I was just very resentful. But what I realized is that the real resentment came because I wasn't forgiving myself for being in that type of dynamic, for not saying no when I wanted to say no, for subjecting myself to certain things, for compromising my integrity a lot in the relationship. And I think that's really where it was. That's where a lot of my anger came from. My anger, my resentment, my unhappiness. It was more so rooted in not being able to forgive myself and not understanding that I'm a human being and that I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know, and I didn't trust myself. And that I was moving from a place of a lot of wounds. I wanted to be loved. I did not want to be abandoned or rejected. And I mean, aside from other things that I've had to work on, self-love and boundaries and so forth. But I definitely can say that in the dynamic with the father of my children, he and I have very strong boundaries, but I can definitely say that I've forgiven him because I've forgiven myself. The mistakes he's made, the mistakes I've made, I'm able to forgive. And because I'm able to forgive my own mistakes, and they weren't even mistakes, they were lessons, right? Lessons that we have to learn because we're human, and this is part of the school of humanity, is that we learn these different lessons. And sometimes when we're unconscious, it takes us a couple of rounds, it takes us a couple of bumps, a couple of moments of heartache, of sadness, but we can learn. It's not impossible. And it really just started with me realizing, like, that was for me really huge. You know, I was able to learn that I won't get over it. I won't forgive him. I won't move past this relationship until I'm able to see that it was a part of my story and that I'm human and I know better. And maybe if I did know better, I might have done different, but I had to go through it, and I'm appreciative and I'm grateful that I went through it. And you know, we'll talk. I think when one of my episodes, I'm going to talk about also the distortions that can exist within that whole idea of self-compassion or compassion and forgiveness, because there can be, because there's a line where forgiveness doesn't, you know, there's a line where forgiveness, if without boundaries, is then detrimental also, right? Because you can say, oh, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you, and you forgive someone 12 times and they're a toxic person and they're abusive to you, and you still have this ability to have compassion, but there's also a point where you have to kind of put your foot down and say, no, enough is enough. But yeah, so that's basically it. This is part 1, and it's just basically like I was saying, you cannot give anything that you ain't got. So before you want to try to forgive that ex for fucking up your life, for, excuse my language, but messing up things and just doing awful and being just a disgusting human being and all that, forgive yourself for even loving someone like that, right? Forgive yourself for accepting it. Forgive yourself for not listening to the red flags that your spirit was telling me, because you ain't know. You're human. And it's not even a mistake. You've learned, you know better now. You'll do better. And that's all you can do. So blessings to you all. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully you watch my next episode. Like, subscribe, share. Enjoy your day. Blessings.